So, I'm Dot Butler. I am the program manager of the Winchester Coalition for a Safer Community, and we are bringing you this program tonight. I have known Taylor Howe since she was this big, her whole family, and that's an honor for me to say that I know you. A few years back, we reconnected when she came back to be inducted into the Winchester Hall of Fame for soccer, her team, the 1998 soccer team that was inducted. And we reconnected, and Taylor told me her story of recovery, which was really heartfelt. She just poured it out, and we shared a lot. She didn't even know that I did this kind of work. And then in the fall, I had some parents contact me because they were concerned about what was going on in the party scene in Winchester. They asked me what I could do. So I went to Anna Paradis, who is now the Dean of Students. We have a Dean of Students now, and she's very, very interested in the voice of the student. So we talked about it, and she looked at me and she said, really, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the school tries to do as much as they can. However, they don't parent on weekends. And so we got talking, and she said it really would make a difference if someone could talk to them about their own experience. And what we've learned is lived experiences really are what resonate with people. And then I went, bingo, I know this girl who lives in Colorado. And so I asked her if she'd like to come out, and she said yes. I mean, she's come all the way from Colorado just to do this, which is warms our hearts. So it's a very heartfelt story. She's already spoken at the coalition meeting this morning, and I have a young gentleman that attended, and he's come back with a friend from student council, so thank you for coming back. And then we had a meeting with the students, which was not mandatory, it was all voluntary, and we had over 90 kids in the auditorium, and their coaches came too, which I think it wasn't just athletes, but those who were athletes, their coaches attended. And now we're here with you tonight. We have some other alums that are here to support Taylor. And I hope you can share any stories you want to share in your experiences growing up in Winchester and kind of like the culture. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Do not be nervous. They're very friendly people. Look at all of them. And thank you.
I'll try not to fidget.
It's okay to fidget.
I should sit on my hands.
It's okay.
Oh, thank you. It's really an honor to be here. I am nervous. I've been nervous all day, on and off, and I have learned in my sobriety that when I'm asked to be of service, I just say yes. And I'm like, I don't know what this is going to look like. And I don't, and then it was like, no, we're going to have you speak at this time and this time and this time. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in. And it feels like an honor, and I feel really grateful that I hopefully have a story that can help even just one person. And a lot of you know my story, and I have some of my best friends here tonight too, and which is pretty amazing. I'm going to try not to cry through the whole thing. And my mother's best friend came from New Hampshire, which, thank you. So, and you guys, this is not going to help me not crying. I know. I'm like, go to the back. So I grew up here in Winchester. I grew up on Ridgefield Road, in Sims Corner, and I grew up with a good mom and dad playing sports. I was a gymnast, a soccer player, a water skier, a snow skier, and I had parents who were really involved my whole life. I learned to snow ski between my dad's legs and learned to water ski with him pushing me up out of the water. And my mom has just always been there for me my whole life. I started playing very competitive soccer in elementary school, and then a lot through really for the rest of my schooling, through middle school, through high school. I played club soccer. I traveled all over the country playing. In 6th grade, my team won the nationals, and that became my life. And in middle school, starting like 7th, 8th grade, some of that timing is a little bit blurry, but I started becoming more curious about smoking pot and smoking cigarettes and drinking. Never really had enough to fully get drunk, or I would smoke pot and not really feel anything, but I started dabbling in middle school. And between I think it was around 8th grade, I had taken 8 Coors Light from my dad, and my dad struggled with alcoholism for a lot of my childhood, and I'll circle back to that later. I took about 8 Coors Light from him. I put them in a backpack, and I went to my friend's house, and I thought, we're gonna drink. And there were, I think, 4 of us, and we go up to her room, and we open the beers, and we start drinking, and we hear these footsteps coming up the stairs, and it was her mother. And their immediate reaction was like, throw it away, get rid of it. And mine was, chug it, like, don't waste it. And I just had this immediate, like, I want more of that. Whatever that was, I want more of it. And the summer going into, and I had those experiences a couple more times, but never had enough alcohol to really get drunk. The summer going into my freshman year, I had been invited to a soccer camp and to go practice with the varsity team. And my mom and my other brother were in New Hampshire, and I was home with my dad and my older brother, and they were asleep. And I went downstairs and I opened up my father's liquor cabinet, and I pulled out Beefeater dry gin, and I sat on my kitchen floor and I got drunk. And it felt like I just found the answer that I needed to get through the rest of my life. It's like, oh, I could breathe. And that really started me out on this 5 years of drinking to blackouts. Every time I drank, I couldn't stop drinking. And I ended up making the varsity soccer team as a freshman, which was kind of a big deal then. And I was a good athlete. Everything looked pretty good on the outside. I had a beautiful home and a good mom and dad. And that kind of kept people off my back a little bit. Then the partying kept going. And when I think the first time that my parents ever caught me drinking, I was at my friend's house, and we were in the basement, and just the 2 of us were drinking, and I woke up face down on her couch, covered in vomit, a freshman in high school. It was my mom picked me up. It was the day of the soccer ball, and she's like, something's not right. And I was still drunk from the night before, and she said, you're not going to the soccer ball. And I said, yes, I am. She said, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. And we started just battling, and that was really what it was like for the next 4 years. And every time I would go out to a party, like, oh, I'm just partying. I'm just doing what all these kids are doing. I'm just, living the life of a student athlete. God bless you, you're good. Living the life of a student athlete, and this is what we do. But there was something in me, it consumed me. It was the only thing I looked forward to, the only thing I ever thought about. And it started progressing a lot pretty quickly. I continued playing soccer. I continued traveling around the country. The blackouts had started becoming more and more. Partying is how I framed it, and I could kind of blend in with what all these kids were doing, because everybody really was just partying. But I would end up at home by myself in my bathtub drinking vodka, wondering where everybody went. And that was really what it looked like for me for years. And I don't remember if I told people that that's what would happen. I can remember looking around and saying, like, where did everyone go? Where's the party? Because I couldn't stop when I started. About my junior year, it was getting just worse and worse. there's so many instances when I look back of that insanity. As soon as that alcohol is in my body, what would happen to me was insane. And it felt like the only way I could live, and yet it was wreaking havoc on my whole life. And I didn't care. I would say, I'm a good athlete, or I'm this, like, leave me alone. And it kind of kept everybody off my back. And starting my junior year, I started dabbling in other substances and doing ecstasy, and it started to become harder and harder to hide how I was living. I started fighting more with my mom and dad. I would come home and we'd have screaming matches, or they'd say, you need to be home at this specific time, and I just didn't care, or you're grounded. And I would walk out of the house, say, I'm going for a walk, and I would go to my friend's house and I would drink, and I'd come back home and be like, I just went for a walk. And that was how it was. There was so much turmoil at home. I look at that now as a blessing, because my parents they questioned what was happening, but they never normalized it. They never acted like it was okay or made me feel comfortable with how I was living, which ultimately helped lead to me, getting sober at a young age. I think it was my junior year, Kristen, it's so funny, I've shared this now, this is the third time today, but my friend Kristen wrote me a letter, and this is gonna make it so much harder. Right here, look away. And telling me she was worried about me. And at the time, I couldn't really feel those emotions. I was very much, but my parents ended up finding that letter and reading it. And it was when they really started to realize something might not be the same with me as all these other kids who are drinking and partying. And they confronted me about it and said, now you have friends that are concerned. And I just didn't care. It just kept getting worse. But it really started them realizing that I had a problem. That letter probably helped save my life. And this is so amazing to have both of you here. So so my senior year came around, I was the captain of the soccer team. I was all Scholastic and all Eastern Math and league MVP, and I had all these awards. And the outside of my life looked very different than what it was really like at home, and how I felt inside and what was happening. I wasn't really a great student. I don't remember anyone but my parents really being that concerned with it. Like, what are you doing? And I started being recruited to different schools to play D1 soccer. And I was like, nope. I'd rather drink. I'd rather party. I'm done. And I'll play, but drinking is my priority. And if I play D1 soccer, it's going to affect my drinking too much, and I don't want to do that. And through my senior year, I started saying, I think I'm an alcoholic, and not really knowing what exactly that meant. But I knew that I was probably going to die. That's how it felt. Like, if I keep living this way, I'm probably going to die. And I would say to people, I think I'm an alcoholic. I need to get better, but I'm 18 years old. I can't, what am I ever going to look forward to? What am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I couldn't fathom a life without alcohol. And it started to become, I don't know how to continue living like this, and I have no idea how to live without it. I don't know what I'll look forward to. I don't know what I'll do. What about not going to the parties or not being with my friends? And by the end of my senior year, I was going to a school in Virginia to play D3 soccer. And that summer, things just continued to get worse. I was in New Hampshire. I had gone out water skiing at 9 o'clock in the morning, still completely drunk from the night before. And a family friend of mine, her dad had been in recovery for, God, I think, what would it have been, 40 years at the time. He just celebrated 62 years. And his daughter had a year sober at that point. And she said, you know, Tay, you might have what we have. You might be an alcoholic. I said, well, I know I'm an alcoholic, but I'm 18 years old. What am I going to do for the rest of my life? You know, I don't care. I'm going to keep drinking. And she said, okay, well, you know where to come. And I had heard my Uncle Guy say that multiple times. You know where to come, kid. You know, when I'd get out of the water from skiing and be like, oh, I think I'm still drunk. You know where to come. And that was planted in my head, even though I didn't really pay attention to it. I went to college and we had double sessions at soccer, and I was smoking cigarettes and I was drinking, and I had started doing drugs, and it was hot in Virginia. I remember it being terrible, like running, thinking, oh, what am I doing? And I also had this thought of maybe college will be different. Maybe I'll get better. And that did not happen. It got exponentially worse. And I continued playing soccer. It started to affect me physically a lot more. My eyes were yellow. I was puffy. Like my insides were starting to show on the outside more and more. And without having my parents at home that I had to go home to and see and try to act somewhat normal, and just this free reign, things became terrible. And I was drinking daily, and every time I drank, I blacked out. So I found cocaine, which really helped me with those blackouts for a while. And that things really started spiraling. And I would try, and I had tried this in high school a little bit too. I would say, I think vodka is my problem, and I'm just gonna drink bottled beer because I think that's what classy people do. And I would be chugging beer, chasing down the vodka, or maybe I'll drink fine wine, which was Boone's Farm from the local liquor mart. And to this day, I have not had fine wine. I don't think. You know, I drank a lot of things. I don't remember any fine wine. And I would try to figure out, how can I control this? How can I drink like a normal person so I can still have a life, and I can still have friends, and I can still go out, and I won't feel so lost in this world, like I have nothing to look forward to anymore, which was crazy with what my life really was. The fact that in my mind, that relief that I had been chasing, that feeling I had on my kitchen floor at 14 years old, I never felt that again. And I spent years chasing it. And I, at college, starting at none of my like controlling, and I'm going to drink this and not drink this, none of that worked. And everything continued to get worse. By Christmas of my freshman year, I came home and I said, I'm going to get sober this time. I'm really going to do it. And I told my parents, he said, I'm not going to go to Montreal where my friends are going, because Montreal isn't a good place to get sober, but I'm going to go out and hang out with my friends on New Year's, and I'm not going to drink. And I went and I hung out with my friends, and I didn't drink, and I did drugs all night instead. And I thought, well, this isn't my problem. Well, a week, 2 weeks later, then it was all my problem, and everything just continued to escalate. I went back to school and got worse and worse and worse. And I flunked out of school. I had a 0.9 GPA after my freshman year. And my mom said, how did you do that? I said, it was actually pretty easy. No, I just didn't go ever. And my soccer coach had pulled some strings, and he said, I can get you back in school if you come to summer school and you get your grades up and you can play in the fall. I was like, okay, I'm going to get my life together, and I'm going to come back at summer school. I'm going to go to class. I'll get my grades up. And I told my mom, I'm going to get myself right at summer school. So I go down to Virginia and I start running on the track and trying to do this conditioning training and getting myself ready, and then still drinking every day. But I'm getting better in my mind is what I'm saying. I'm getting sober and still blacking out. I had friends who had started, I'm going to drive you home at 10 o'clock and you are not allowed to have more alcohol. And they would try to do that, and I would leave the dorm or leave home, even in Winchester, and I would search for more alcohol. And I would do that. If I was dropped off before I was done drinking, I would try to escape from my third floor window. And I can remember trying to scale the side of my house to get out to find more alcohol because my parents had barricaded me in so I couldn't leave. It's just crazy the lengths that I would go to. Until I was passed out, I did not stop. And I continued drinking, and I went on a 3-day bender, and I came back to the dorm. A friend of mine, actually, who graduated from Winchester High School, was also at summer school at our same college, and he said, go to bed, like, go. And I went home, and I thought, I don't feel quite right. And I went outside and smoked a cigarette, and then I went into the dorm bathroom, and I turned the water on. I was like, something's not right. And I filled my hands up with water, and I leaned my head over to drink it, and I don't remember anything else until I woke up face down on the bathroom floor. I cut my head open. I had vomited everywhere, and I was lying in a pile of blood and vomit, and I couldn't move my body. I was completely paralyzed, and it was probably a couple of seconds. It felt like eternity. And when I got myself up, I looked in the mirror, and it scared the heck out of me what I saw. My eyes were yellow and vacant. I didn't recognize who I was. I hated who I was. I hated what I saw. And I said the words out loud, "You win." And I went home a couple of days later, and I said, "This is really it. I'm gonna do it this time." But I'm 19 years old, and I'm still gonna go out and hang out with my friends, because what else am I gonna do? And I kept drinking. And the insanity of that, I can remember being at a friend's house, and one of our old friends had approached me, said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Great, I'm getting sober." And he's like, "You're drinking." And I'm like, I don't know how that happened. And it baffled me. And I had gone home and made up this fake conversation in my bathroom because I could hear my mother on the stairs. I'm like, "I'm so proud of myself for staying sober tonight." And I can hardly stand up. At that point, my body, my tolerance for drinking was insane. By the end of my drinking, the littlest bit of alcohol got me incredibly drunk. My body was so saturated. And the next day, my parents sat me down, and my dad said, "We will not watch you kill yourself for one more day in our home. So get out." I was like, "Get out." And I started screaming, and he said, "Give me the car keys." And I took the car keys out of my pocket, and I chucked him at my dad's head, and it slit his head open. And I ran down the street, and they had told me, "You can go to rehab, or you can go stay with Sarah," that same friend who a year earlier had said, "You might be one of us." And I called her. I was sitting on the curb. I was smoking a cigarette, and I said, "I may need to come see you." I didn't know my parents had already talked to her, and her dad had said to my mom, "You can't help her up, but you sure as hell can help her down." And that is what finally pushed my parents to change something. And she said, "I'll see you tomorrow morning." And an old friend picked me up, and we drove around drinking. That was July 15th, 2003. And that was my last drink of alcohol. And July 16th will mark 22 years of sobriety, which is crazy. I feel really, really grateful. And I have, we've all lost people to this disease, and there's there's no formula to save somebody. But I know if my parents didn't do what they did, I would not be here today. And it was a 50-50 chance that I was going to make it, even with them doing that. In my 21 plus years of sobriety, I have never once experienced somebody getting sober who says, I feel pretty good. I'm getting 3 meals a day at home. My parents aren't that upset with me. I'm like, life is pretty good. I just decided I wanted to stop drinking. I've never once heard that story. And that it was powerful for me. My parents wanted me to feel what that life would, if this is the life you're choosing, you feel what comes with that. You don't get to live in this beautiful house with all of the comforts that we've worked hard to give you and live this way. You get to go feel the result of your choices. And my mom had said to me, she said, I am so grateful you're an alcoholic. I thought you needed an exorcism. And we laugh about that today. She's like, I really did. Something was not right. And I spent a number of weeks in New York with my friend. I started getting help and learning what alcoholism is, learning that when I start drinking, I can't stop, and that is never going to change. And when I'm not drinking, I'm consumed by it. And that's never going to be different. And really understanding that and hearing my story told over and over again by other people who struggled with the same way that I have, and then later being able to give that back has been incredible, and a reminder of where I come from, and that I got really lucky. That there's not all of us make it here to 20 plus years of sobriety and be able to to share that. So when I came home, I can remember saying something like, I'm not going back to school. You have to trust me now. I'm sober. My mom's like, you have been sober. It wasn't that long. And she's like, you have been a nightmare for 5 years. So sorry if we don't exactly trust you yet. Give it some time. But my soccer coach said, I'll help find you an apartment off campus. I'll go to meetings with you. I'll do anything I can to help you. And I said, Phil, if I come back to school, I will die. It's not my path. I can feel it. And that was hard for my dad to accept. I said, I'm not going to play soccer anymore. And I was starting to be able to realize what my dreams were. When and I had shared this earlier. There was a time about a year before I got sober that I was out on the boat on the lake with my family. And there's this big boathouse, and my dream as an 18-year-old alcoholic was I want to just live in that boathouse, somebody to give me all of the cigarettes and all of the alcohol and all of the cocaine in the world and just leave me alone. That is what I want, and that will make me happy. And when I got sober, I didn't even know that I had different dreams or a path or purpose. I got to start to get to know myself. And when I moved home, I said, I want to go to muscular therapy school, and I want to get into the healing arts, and I want to eventually teach Pilates. And I had all of these dreams, and something really cool happened is my parents grew to trust me. And we developed a beautiful relationship. About 2 years into my sobriety, I sat my dad down and I said, Dad, Mom and I are not going to watch you kill yourself for one more day. while we watch. I was like, sound familiar? And he got sober that day, and Dad and I got to share many years of sobriety together. And we started running together. I was living with them for the first few years when I was going to school, which are some of my coolest memories with my mom and dad. And it went from having so much turmoil and fighting. I was always uncomfortable to go home. We were always yelling at one another, and I've become really grateful for that my mom and dad they always showed me that they believed in me more than I believed in myself. And a life that I missed the comfort that they had given me. I missed the waking up and being able to all have breakfast together and not be hungover thinking, oh my God, what did I say to them last night? And that uncomfortability I have never felt since I was drinking. I ended up moving out. I struggled with other addictions early on in sobriety. I had eating disorders. I started running 20 miles a day or something. It was insane. I was running. I was under eating. My brain, and I had stopped really seeking help for what I struggle for my brain. It's like you take away the drinking and I was left with myself, which was actually quite scary at times. And when I had moved out to Colorado, I started teaching Pilates full time. And at 4.5 years of sobriety, I started really struggling. And I just I didn't feel right. It's like that new sobriety and all these other ways I was trying to escape myself weren't working anymore. And I had met a group of people through recovery that I was seeking out at the time. And this man said, would you be open to meeting with this woman I know who I think could really help you? And I said, yes. And I met with her, and that's when I really started to do the work in sobriety and get help for what I struggle with, and really looking at, alcohol as a symptom of what I have, and being able to go through steps and eventually be able to give it back. It's like I realized my life is actually not really about me always making myself feel okay and having this self-obsession of my life has to be so controlled, because if it feels out of control, I'm going to drink, and if I drink, I'm going to die. So everyone just leave me alone, and this is what I have to do. And when I started taking certain steps and really looking at myself and being able to tell myself the truth about who I was, about who I had been, starting to be less scared about feeling, and not being afraid anymore, realizing that running away from it was a lot harder than just facing it all. And through that, I developed a spiritual connection where I don't have that crazy mind all the time anymore. It's pretty rare that I start to feel that way. And I get to keep what I have because I give it back to other people who need it, or coming here. I look at that as a part of why I've been given the gift of sobriety is, if I stop giving it back, there's that purpose is just a little bit dimmer. I am a mother today, which is pretty cool. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and a husband, and a little farm. I have 5 dogs. Maybe I have a little bit of addiction with my adopting of rescue dogs, just a little. And I own a business. I have a Pilates studio, it's a gym and a yoga studio, and I have 30 women that work with me, which is crazy, and we all get along, which I feel like is a miracle of sobriety too. I have tools to deal with life today, and I've had the blessing of being able to share in sobriety with my best friends since we were young. Been through a lot together, which is pretty amazing. My parents, after my daughter was born, they moved out to Colorado, and I found a spiritual path where my dad would say, "Oh my God, here you are! Like you go to India, and you go to Thailand, and can you just can you stop making me have to say, okay, we trust you still, go do it." And when I went to India, he said, "The only thing I'll ask you is don't go to Kashmir." Like 7 years sober, and I call my dad from a cafe in Kashmir, and he's like, "Oh God." So there were times I still, would give them a little bit of a run for their money, but they ended up moving. And the way that I started praying, I was introduced to sweat lodges and Native American prayer, where I haven't talked about this at all today, but I've been adopted into a Navajo family and got really deep into that whole world. And certain prayer ceremonies and things that we do, my dad would say, "I really appreciate that you told me after you were done doing that so I could have some peace." But it's taken me places I never imagined. I think Kristen and I ended up, a number of years sober, sleeping in a teepee together on the Wyoming border, praying, going, this is a lot cooler than at the end of a bar, talking about our war stories from high school. And those experiences have been pretty cool to share with, my best friends, and to be able to watch us all have families and be able to raise our families sober, which is pretty amazing. So my parents, after my daughter was born, they moved out to Colorado, and Dad got pretty sick about 8 years before. He got really sick a couple weeks before I got married, and had major operations and just never fully recovered. And it was a number of years while he was in Colorado of in and out of the hospital hundreds and hundreds of times. And because of my sobriety, I was able to be there for him and be there for my mom. And because of sobriety and and recovery, when my dad passed away, he believed in God, which was amazing and a miracle. And when I said goodbye to him, I knew he wasn't worried about me. And I was able to give back that gift of believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, that he knew that he could, make his journey home, and that I was going to be okay. And I feel him really close now. Like he would have thought this was pretty cool. My mom lives with us, which people say, "Oh, it's so nice of you to take care of your mom." I'm like, "Oh my God," I come home, all our laundry's done. I'm like, "Mom, I haven't had this since I was a teenager." She's pretty amazing. And, Mom has been drunk twice in her life by accident. She's like, "How did I end up with all of this addiction all around me?" And she has been a huge support, and gets to be there and watch my daughter grow up. I feel really grateful for my life today, and I really wouldn't have any of it if my parents hadn't kicked me out of the house at 19 years old and said, "Enough is enough." And had they said, "Maybe it'll be better if you just drink at home and we can keep an eye on you." They never said any of that. And that saved my life, along with friends who didn't give up on me and who really helped, when it mattered. It's pretty amazing. So I've cried a lot today. So July 16th, we'll mark 22 years of sobriety. I've never had a legal drink. My daughter has never seen me drunk, and God willing, she never will. And I get to be on this path with my best friends, and be back in a town that, has meant a lot to me, and a lot of people that have meant a lot to me. So I'm pretty grateful today, and I hope my experience can somehow help somebody. So I'm happy to take questions or